Hi, King Grossman here again. Welcome back to our second segment of YourTown television program this week. And it was wonderful to be with Stephen Yu, a composer and singer and a star student of my next guest, Louis Lebherz. And Louis is an opera star, had a magnificent career singing opera all over the world with the greats. He was one of the greats himself. And he does a lot of things around the Carmel and Monterey community, the Monterey Peninsula community, one of which is teach voice lessons. And so, Louis, thanks for coming back on the show.
My pleasure.
It's been fun having you. And Louis is also a golf buddy of mine, so we have a lot of fun on the golf course. But I want to start out with just, Stephen was such a great guest to have on the show, and I'm so much appreciate you saying, hey, you need to interview Stephen. What's it like being his coach, his voice coach?
He's a very interesting kid, you know, kid. He's 27 years old. To me, that's a kid. He's younger than my daughters. He's got a calmness about him, this kind of Eastern calmness about him that makes it very interesting to teach him, you know. You tell him something and you can see him kind of like absorbing it and becoming it rather than immediately. Very often with an American student, you know, you say, look, all you have to do is take these 2 aspirin, you know, and practice it every day. Of course, then they take 12 aspirin because they think they can do it 6 times as fast, you know. But Stephen just very, very calm. The thing that I've had to get used to with Stephen is his technique of singing. Everyone has their own way of singing. Mine was always operatic and with the full voice and everything. And I have one girl who sings cabaret and another girl who sings at parties and another one who sings in bars. And then along comes Stephen, who sings jazz. He loves jazz. And as I listen to him and have heard him so many times in singing songs and listening to him kind of deconstruct tempi and deconstruct rhythms, he sounds very much like Nat King Cole, which is very interesting to listen to.
What a compliment.
And it's very, very pleasant. Then he has a friend named Michael Martinez who plays piano for him, and another fellow who, I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Yi, who's also, so we got Yi and Yu. and Yi is a wonderful saxophone player. And I say, you 3 guys should be working everywhere because it's such a commercial, beautiful sound that they produce, you know. And so with Stephen, it was just a matter of working on setting up this higher voice, you know, getting him to pull that voice up high into his head and sing. And then it was really interesting to watch his classical music voice change as his range began to rise from where he sang a G above middle C upwards to now a B flat. And to watch him apply that, now when he comes for his lessons, very often we'll go the whole 45 minutes and not sing one note. We'll just talk about the philosophy of voice or choir. That's the kind of kid that kind of man that he is. I shouldn't keep calling him a kid. Yeah.
Well, and this kind of segues into, he mentioned that one of the things that he really benefits from being around you is kind of mentorship. And I know from other students, one of which was my niece, Becky Canale, I saw her, you give her wonderful technique, but she came away there feeling better as a human being.
Well,
and so how important is that? And I know that's just part of what you do, but as a person, not necessarily as a singer, but it also informs the voice. So,
you know, I tell my students right away, you know, listen, these are the things you need to do to sing safely, but the singing is not technical. The singing is emotional. And it's to get beyond the technique and to have your palette of colors, you know. And then when you sing a song and really sing the text and really sing the words of the song, that the emotion then calls the colors off of your palette and puts the voice together. There was a great bass at the beginning of the 20th century named Fyodor Shaliapin, a Russian. I read 2 books by him. And the one thing I'll never forget him saying is that there's a different voice for every song, you know, so.
And you have to find that.
Yeah. But another thing that I work on is their self-esteem, you know, to tell them, don't worry about how you sing, because if you think that you need to sound like Samuel Ramey, being a bassist, if I wanted to sound like Samuel Ramey, I might go to an audition and the guy says, he sounds just like Samuel Ramey. I wonder what Samuel Ramey's doing. You know?
Right.
You know.
We need Louis Lebherz.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
or Stephen
you know,
Yu.
be you. Show what you have.
Right.
In other words, don't manufacture a technique, but just let your instrument translate your emotions into the song.
Right.
So that,
Well, kind of, I appreciate that. And kind of going to the very beginning for a singer, I mean, for myself, I had done at one point a little acting, and I decided I wanted to try musical theater, and I had no earthly idea whether I could actually do it. And I found a voice coach, and and she was wonderful. She had performed, you know, professionally and so forth on Broadway. And I said, Susan, I don't have to do this, but if I can do it, I want to do it. And I said, so be honest with me, and let's see where we go. And I ended up doing several musicals, working with professional actors, and had a lot of fun doing it. So how do you take it from the shower to in front of the public? You know, what's all that about? I mean, really, when you're really just trying to get started with your voice.
we talked about us being golfers and golf games, you know, and your golf game is at a very high level and mine is at a very sort of coming along level.
It's coming along.
All right. It's the same thing with voice, you know. You don't just step out there as a star. The cellist was walking with his cello in New York, and he says to the cab driver, "How do I get to Carnegie Hall?" And the cab driver says, "Practice." Mm-hmm. You know,
yes.
and that's what it is. It's find a teacher who knows not to hurt you. Mm-hmm. When you sing, it should never hurt. You know, it should just be natural, and then just practice. But the big difference, and one thing that I learned from one of my teachers, Armin Boyadjian in New York City, I worked with him for a while, who, by the way, was also Sam Raimi's teacher.
Okay,
you know?
right.
And Paul Pliska's teacher, two of the great American bassists. And Armin explained to me that the difference between speaking and singing is that we speak horizontally. Hey, how you doing? You know, and when we sing it, it's more, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
You know, that's the difference. You know, and he says it's horizontal versus vertical. So when we sing up this way. I'm sorry about this noise going on.
Yes. There we go. No?
No, we didn't.
Oh, let's just continue.
Okay.
On,
So anyway, the idea is if I speak to you, well, for example, I had a choir of Filipinos, 75 Filipinos in a choir one time. I love them. They're in San Diego. When a Filipino says goodbye to you, they say paalam. Mm-hmm. Paalam kind of comes off down here, very paalam. And I said to them very, very casually, now, paalam is the way that you say it, but when we sing it, we have to say paalam.
Pull it up.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I said, where you breathe is where you sing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but then that's only technically correct, because sometimes you need to sing like this,
right,
you know?
Right,
but that's what I'm talking about. When you have a technique that works for you, it will make the colors that you need.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what approaches do you use to develop your students? Because you're having to find what works for each one of them, but then I'm sure there's universal techniques that if you don't do certain, like with the golf swing, if you don't have your grip right and your stance right and your posture right, you're never going to do much with it. So there are basics that you have to have, but then from there, you have to find what works for each student.
Well, now let's go back to the golf swing. If your grip is wrong and your stance is wrong, you have to correct the grip and you have to correct the stance before you can begin to teach the other stuff.
Yes.
The same thing happens when you get a singer who has vocal problems. You have to get to the root of those vocal problems, find them, and eliminate that from their technique, and then begin to build it again very fundamentally. The voice is it's kind of a mixture of a wind instrument and a string instrument. I'll explain. This is when I'm talking to a student the first time. I said, the voice is driven by compression, compressed air. like that, and the compression wants to get out. Just like nature abhors a vacuum, nature also abhors compression. You know, it needs to let that air out. So we have this compressed air. The vocal cords close to hold that compressed air in. And then when we sing, we just let the vocal cords come apart and the edges of the vocal cords vibrate. Now we have created a vibrating string of air, very much like a vibrating string on a violin, because it now goes up into the roof of the mouth and to the bridge of the nose, just like the string of the violin goes over the bridge on the face. And that causes the bones of the face to vibrate.
Yes.
And that's a part of it. But the beauty of the tone in the violin is not it vibrating on the face, but rather the space behind the face, that is underneath, so that what we get is, well, let me just give you an example.
Please.
If I'm just letting, now I've got the vibration. Now I got to get that vibration up here. Now when I bring it into the face, you see, you know,
yes,
that
a full resonant
So
sound.
we resist the compression to get the string to vibrate. But I said,
but you've got to release it too, right?
well, no, it wants to come out.
Okay.
It wants to come out.
Okay.
Right. So now, as that air comes out and it's resisted, we sing on the resistance of the breath. You know, that's what causes it to vibrate. Then, because it needs to get out and it causes these things to vibrate. The other thing that is unique about the human voice, as opposed to that enhances what we just talked about, is not only do we compress our breath, we compress the emotion, so that when we sing, we let out a long string of emotion. It's what Pavarotti said, singing is a controlled scream.
I love it.
Yeah.
The passion.
Yeah. So if I go, but I can go, and even though they sound exactly the same, they're not.
They're not the same.
You know, the audience knows
Yes.
when you're giving them real emotion, and that's the reason that you get an audience, because the people that can't do that get it vicariously from you.
Right, right. So this is a good maybe segue into my next question. You know, I know that there are those that work hard at something they're not as good at and become great at it. And then there are those that are great at something naturally and work at it, but because they're great at it, they don't have to work quite as hard to be very good, but they might get surpassed by those that outwork them. And on the other hand, there's just this God-given talent. So how much is successful singing, you know, hard work, and how much is it God-given talent?
I had this wonderful voice teacher in Los Angeles that I worked with for a long time, for years and years, until he finally passed away. And he used to have a sign on his wall, and he said, "Never teach a pig to sing. It will just frustrate you and annoy the pig." I tell singers when they come in, you know, do you think you can make me a great singer? I say, great singers are born. Great singers are born, not made. Great voices can be developed. I mean, you can take a mediocre voice and add it to a great. What is a great singer? A great singer is not somebody with a great technique and a great voice. A great singer is a person who can sing a song and bring you to tears.
Yes.
You know,
That emotional content.
Right, and that's something that you can't teach.
Yes.
You know, you can't teach someone to be emotional. You know?
Right.
I don't think.
It's by nature.
Yeah,
By
and
their nature.
that's what makes a great singer. So there are people who are great singers who are born with great voices. That what a gift they have. And you're right, they don't work as hard in the beginning, but eventually, when you start getting to the more rarefied space of the upper echelon of singers, you realize I have a lot to learn.
Yes.
You know, and that's when you really
Then
start
you
to
start
work.
working.
Yeah, you start to work. I used to tell people too that I mean, when you look at what's going on in the singing world, a young singer finds out when he's singing in high school that he's a good singer, and he decides, maybe I want to major in music because people tell him he's got a good voice. So he goes to college with all these other singers, and they graduate with a bachelor's degree. Now, those kids are now 21, 22 years old, ready to go out, and they'll go out and do auditions, and 1 or 2 out of 1,000 will immediately get swept up into the next levels. So they say, well, maybe I need to work a little more, so they go into a master's program. And out of that master's program, which is reduced from that 1,000, maybe 100 of them go into the master's program, maybe 15 or 20 of them will then go into the upper echelon. And then now you've got this other 75%, 50% of them sell insurance, and the other 25% of them, or even a smaller percent, then go and say, maybe I just need to go a little further and get my doctorate of music. And they go get their doctorate of music, but they still don't have a career. Mm-hmm. The reason that happened is there's something that's lacking. But now that they have a doctorate, they become teachers,
right,
and they teach the same bad habits that kept them from having a career,
yikes,
which is a very interesting situation.
So academia, you have to be careful about academia.
Yeah. I found that the really great universities with like Juilliard, mm-hmm, and with Indiana University, that they don't have DMAs teaching in their programs, in their master's programs, for their performance programs. They have people singing who had careers. Older singers like Indiana University, almost all.
So they teach by technique, but by feel.
Well, they teach by experience.
By experience,
too.
too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've been talking about, how a singer needs to have authentic emotion and passionate emotion that is expressed.
Yeah.
When I had Stephen on, he was talking about how the process of being, of having song in his life is a journey toward authenticity. And so I'm asking you, how does being an artist, a vocalist, a creative person actually make you a better human being, a better community member, an artist?
I don't really know what it is about that. I mean, it's the same thing that makes a dancer or a great photographer or a great painter, achieve greatness in their art. But isn't it interesting that almost all of them are liberals?
Well, it is. It is.
It's a bleeding heart, It's a need to reach out and calm other people's souls with your dance, mm-hmm, with your paintings, or to disturb them in that case, or as a singer to make people just feel your emotions and become in touch with your emotions. And I think that is a thing that helps the world.
Yes. And that's a good place to leave it. I really appreciate you being back here.
That was a lot of fun.
It really was. Yeah. And I will tell our audiences that Louis' handicap is going down. He's practicing that too. In fact, he's in some golf clinics, or a golf clinic, I believe.
Oh, yeah. At MPC.
Yeah, at MPC.
I'll give him a push. Jason Russo is a good golf teacher.
Jason Russo. Call him up if you want to play some golf. Call Louis up if you want to do some great work with your voice. Thanks a lot, Louis.
Okay, my pleasure.
All right. We'll be back in a moment.